All right, so I'll start us off. Um, my name is Robbie. This is Luke, and we did the Church of Lukumi Babalu Ai Incorporated versus the City of Hialeah. So the church, a little background, Church of Lukumi Babalu Ai. Um, they're the plaintiff, so they are suing the City of Hialeah in this um, court case that was brought up to the Supreme Court. So the church actually practices the Santeria religion, which comes from a mix of African and Roman Catholicism, which was originated in Cuba and then was brought to the United States. They practice there's animal sacrifices in their religion, and they sued the city of Hialeah because of laws that were put in place specifically against them. Their argument was the free exercise clause. So the city of Hialeah is the defendant, which is a city in Florida, just north of Miami. Um, They're the defendant. They're representing the local government that passed ordinances, which was restricting animal sacrifices within city limits. And they argued that laws were passed for city health and for safety reasons, and weren't really targeting any specific religion. But we'll get into that. Some of the basic facts. So again, the Santeria religion was practiced, which called for animal sacrifices. It originates in the Caribbean, and the court case talks about how the carotid arteries of the animals were cut, resulting in their death. They'd then be cooked and eaten, except for cases of healing and death rites, which the animals were used for different other reasons. Um, then the whole everything comes into play when they lease land in Hialeah to build a house of worship and other facilities there. It's a direct quote from the court case. Um, and so that's when things kind of started to get a little shaky. Um, then after figuring this out, the city of Hialeah, um, they essentially created some ordinances which banned animal sacrifices, which was aimed at protecting health and preventing animal cruelty. But when it was brought up to the Supreme Court said they kind of actually ruled in favor of the church, saying the law was made too specific towards the church. Um, and instead of using general language, it was really using a lot of um, specific language that was directly targeting um, the church and all of that, because they were using language that was expressly used in the church's um, practices and kind of religious documents, um, and really just went after them, but while allowing most, like any other um, type of animal killing, which again just adds a little bit of confusion to everything. It took away the main practice of Santeria. Um, and the Supreme Court also said that the law went further than was necessary to prevent any kind of issues.
So the legal issues regarding this case include the free exercise clause of the First Amendment, which prohibits the government from making laws that restrict um, religious practices. And then the Smith Standard, which requires it to be neutral and generally applicable. And they weren't neutral and they weren't generally applicable. It's also discrimination against a minority religion and overstepping of bounds.
Mm.
They received approval for all building permits and zoning requirements in 1987. The city contacted the Attorney General of Florida to see if they could take any more action. The Attorney General advised Hialeah's attorney that religious animal sacrifice violated state law, and the district court ruled in favor of the city and sided with the government's compelling interests. As far as the Supreme Court's decision, Justice Anthony Kennedy ruled in favor of the church. The ordinances were not neutral. They found that all other forms of killing an animal for consumption were acceptable under the law, like hunting and just normal consumption. And if the city was actually worried about safety, then they could have made laws regarding the disposal of the animal or its care. As stated before, they were not generally applicable. And the court emphasized that laws burdening religious practices must have compelling governmental interest. As far as our perspective, we are both in agreement of the court's decision. The ordinances were discriminatory and unconstitutional. They singled out Santeria religion by targeting them. And we don't, with that being said, we don't approve of their practices, but the law was created specifically against them. Then before we conclude here, we're going to be comparing and contrasting another case to kind of give us another perspective. That case is Carson versus Macon 2022. The plaintiffs are David and Amy Carson and Troy and Angela Nelson. The defendant is A. Pender Macon, and he is the commissioner of the Maine Department of Education. And to provide some background here, the state of Maine has a program that provides tuition assistance to families in rural areas that don't have public schools. So families can use this funding to send their children to school, but it excludes religious schools. So the plaintiffs argued that an exclusion of religious schools from tuition assistance violates the free exercise clause. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. So in comparison, both cases violated the free exercise clause. And in contrast, instead of targeting their religious practice, like the city of Hialeah did, they excluded them from the benefits of tuition assistance.
So I just want to kind of wrap this up and just kind of go back and talk about with this specific case and the one of Hialeah that you know both cases talk about religious freedoms and religious practices being violated or religions specifically being targeted by the government, which is specifically not allowed. But the Smith clause did allow stuff for the Smith standard did allow for stuff to happen, but only if it was like generally applied and everything was neutral, not targeting one religion, or so it had to like talk to all of them or something along those lines, and which kind of like brings in this case as there was the plaintiffs, the Carsons, were specifically targeted by the Board of Education, Department of Education, sorry, and from not allowing to go to school, any benefits going to religious schools, which again violates the free exercise clause, just like how banning animal sacrifices, which was the central practice in Santeria, you know, they both very much violated the free exercise clause. So, which is why the Supreme Court was brought in.
So yeah, in conclusion, the Church of Lukumi Babalu Aye versus the City of Hialeah showed the importance of protecting religious freedom using free exercise clause. And by comparing it to Carson versus Macon, we were able to get a different perspective. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And here we're excited.